why not just be proactive? Like, why would one wonder why they're not making more money or getting the promotion or the raise or getting hired if you're not actually doing the work before it's asked for?
An entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow. What's cracking?
What up, y'all? Back at it, Kreatures of Habit podcast, and we are in the studio today with the fun series that my partner Jonathan Yarmeisch and I have created called Kreatures of Habit, What's Really Going Down. And we were just sitting in the in another room right before we hit record here, talking about what are we gonna say today. And honestly, we're just gonna say exactly what the fuck is going on. We are in, it is January 10th, Wednesday, January 10th at 2:23 in the afternoon. And Jonathan, I said, hey man, well, you know, I was like, because I've been shooting podcasts since this morning, and I walked over there and I was like, hey dude, like, what am I missing? What am I missing? And he goes, oh man, we're just having a great day. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, you know. And in January, this is the potentially biggest month of the year for wellness brands like Kreatures of Habit, and we're putting out a lot of great content. But this podcast specifically is not to talk about the mission of Kreatures of Habit, although we will touch on that at times. We want to talk to you guys about the business. We want to talk to you guys about the business, right? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. That was the goal. Transparency around where the business is at, and then I think in the past conversations that we've had, it's been a lot of like visibility into not just like the output, but what's going on and how to process everything that we're trying to juggle at the same time. But yeah, I think, you know, that's what people will be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we're in like an interesting place, because I think it was like 2.5 months ago, Jonathan and I were trying to figure out how to keep the thing alive. We were like literally trying to figure out how to find a foothold to get us through 2023, because we thought that there was a chance that it could go in a very scary direction. It wasn't in a bad place, it was in a scary place. And I think every business just comes just close to that all the time, right? Like, it's never like, it doesn't matter how much revenue you do. It's not like it's not like, oh my God, you're doing so much more revenue. It doesn't mean that your expenses are not going to grow with your revenue. So there are going to be times, no matter how successful you are, that you're gonna like get close to that red zone where it gets fucking scary. And that's where a lot of humans jump ship, when that tension and that stress and that pressure gets so intense that you're like, is it even worth it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think thankfully we're at the point where we pulled, the 2 months ago that we talked, we pulled back a little bit, and it takes time to kind of clean up, right? And I think we dedicated that time to doing it so that you have the ability to then like plan more and look further forward. And I realistically, for January, we were behind the 8 ball with planning. But I feel like now we're starting to, now that the slate has been cleaned a little bit and we've got more stability in where we're at from a cash standpoint, from an inventory standpoint, there's more free headspace to dedicate towards how we want to market to people, what we want to bring to market and add value for people. So that's the energizing part.
This is the other crazy thing, that like we're sitting here in January, and in October, it was just like, we're sitting here in January, and like, we're not in a different position. We're in a very different position, right? Like, we're not sitting with like millions of dollars on the balance sheet, but we're not, like, the two of us are confident that at this point, kind of no matter what happens with raising money, we'll be okay for a while. And that's like a really different place. And that, you know, as a founder and as an entrepreneur in general, no matter what you're kind of focused on, you have to be able to toggle between like, this is a life or death thing, and then quickly go from like, boom, we got through that, now it's execution. Because when you're in life or death, you're knocking on all the doors you possibly can so that the death part never happens, right? Like, you don't want the death to happen. And then once you get through that, for whatever reason, you get some sort of injection of cash, or something big happens at the company where it changes sort of course. You've got to very quickly be able to say, "Oh, pass. That was good. That was over." Now we're on to like building the thing again.
Yeah.
And we're there. We're the company, like, it's just, we were never even in October. There was never a period of time that was like, is this business viable? Because the sales were there, the metrics were there, but if anybody's listening to this and is not an entrepreneur and curious to know, like, well, if the business is there sales wise and the metrics are there on like how you would value a strong business, then what's the problem? And the problem is that, like, raising money is a necessary piece of the puzzle in many startup businesses. It just is. And trying to raise money in a climate like we're in is almost unprecedented. And we've talked about that. But let's talk about the positive shit that's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, so I think what's interesting for just looking back at last year, and we kind of had an idea of where we were going to end up, but we ended up basically 50% higher on revenue than the prior year on 40% less of marketing spend. So that was very encouraging, because a lot of the changes that we talked about last time that we spoke are not reflected in 2023. Those all happened in like late October or early November. So from a marketing standpoint, we recognize the efficiencies there. And right now, I think we're experiencing stacking on top of that the efficiencies in human capital. And part of that is also, and I think this is probably a pain point for a lot of people, being able to make the decision between, okay, I have a company that has sustained a loss for a while and I want to get profitable, whether or not you're willing to make any personal sacrifice in terms of increasing the amount of time for maybe less in terms of compensation. And I think we've navigated that in a way where all those things have stacked together to kind of clean the slate and be like, okay, just like that, we're now looking at a profitable picture. And then with a profitable picture, how much does that alleviate pressure on raising equity financing and being able to leverage capital in a more realistic way for the business? To your point, though, it doesn't scale that way. Like, you can't sacrifice your way all the way to that exit. That's where you really do want to infuse more capital from outside investors to add to headcount and deliver the quality that you want to deliver to the customers, and not be like completely bootstrapping it at all times.
Mm-hmm. And I think, we're also a true testament to this, like, idea that, you're going to hear no just way more than you're going to hear yes. Like I'm not even talking about, like, it doesn't even come close. The odds against you are so strong. The amount of no's you have to endure until you get a yes, especially at a early stage company, right? There's got to be someone that believes in you. And typically, if you get someone with some sort of influence that actually does believe in you, it becomes a little bit easier, but not a lot easier, right? Like, you're always going to have to ask for help at early stage, and even probably at later stage. But I think where we are, it's like, no matter what, we're always going to have to ask for help. You and I were on the phone last night as I was driving down from the city, and you said something that was I really want to talk about here, that I think is important. You said,
I've been drinking a gallon of water a day. I have to pee.
No, but you did say that.
That's been happening a lot lately.
So I've actually had to stop the last 2 podcasts we shot. I had to, like, pop out to take a pee. So I've stopped drinking the big gallon of water, but I do have. Oh, and that's because Jonathan and I are both doing 75 hard. Both doing 75 hard. If you're looking to do something challenging, start 75 hard. It's a fun thing to do. But something that you said to me on the drive down that I think is important to regurgitate here is, why not just be proactive? Like, why would one wonder why they're not making more money or getting the promotion or the raise or getting hired if you're not actually doing the work before it's asked for? Like, yeah. I am so lucky to have you as my partner. And I say that on every one of these episodes because I genuinely feel it. Like, I am so grateful and lucky to have you as my partner, and I know that, and I do not fucking take that shit for granted. You are the most proactive, like, you are the most self-starting. You put shit together and you show up with it just out of the blue, and puts everyone kind of on blast because of how you function as an operator. And what I'm here to say is that like you should only be so lucky if you're watching this or you're listening to this to find a guy like Jonathan, but you should be like Jonathan. You know, he also said like not enough people are like us where you just do the fucking work, right? You just fucking do the work. And it's not going to happen. And if you wait for people to ask you to do it, in many cases it's too late. So just take that. If you take nothing else from this podcast, just know that this came from Jonathan's mouth. We've shaken up a lot of shit in the last few months. We have changed manufacturers. We have eliminated a couple of agencies that we thought weren't doing everything that we had hoped for them to be doing. And when we really looked at it, we were like, wow, like the two of us can probably absorb this work and potentially do a better job. And that's not to say that those agencies are bad people or their work wasn't awesome, but that is to say that like when you're dealing with an agency, and I think this is another thing, you're not the only client.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a time allocation thing, right? And like I keep on hearing a lot, love is spelled T-I-M-E. Like no one is gonna love your business the way you're gonna love your business. And so what does that mean? That means love is time. Love is time. That is what, like, literally, I think what it kind of translates to. You know, like, you spend time with the ones you love. You spend time doing the things you love. And when it comes to business, it's the same thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, you said a lot there, responding to you being grateful for having me as a partner, you know. It's tenfold in the other direction, and you making me a part of the journey that you were on, right? We obviously didn't know each other, and I didn't know what working with you would be like. And so who I am as a person and a professional is probably light years better now, having met you, for reasons that you may or may not recognize. And tying it into kind of the proactive versus reactive, I was actually thinking about this too, how I don't know that we've ever really talked about it that much since then, but it's one of those things where you can probably like read about in some sort of book about leadership, you know, like this is the way to respond to a certain situation, et cetera. But one of the hardest experiences that I've had with Kreatures was early November when I was trying to implement that data platform and downloaded one of our historical apps to actually integrate the platforms and use that historical data, not realizing that that app was going to then fire off orders for all of our historical customers. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I was just like frozen at my desk. Like, oh my God. I went to today's sales, and I was like, $100,000. I was like, I checked the filter again to make sure that I wasn't looking at like the week or the month view. I was like, no, that's today. And then I looked through all the orders, and I was like, oh my God. I just incorrectly fired orders for every subscriber that we've ever had. And in the midst of panicking, right, I was trying to be proactive about implementing something that I thought would be meaningful insights for the business and I think will be meaningful insights for the business. But then I quickly had to turn and kind of be proactive about how do I solve for this? And it was made all the more easier because I called you, I told you what had happened, and I told you like, this is how it needs to be fixed, and then I'm going to send an email to all those customers. And then you texted me later on that day and were like, and I was, I think, apologetic again and thankful for you not blowing up on me for the mistake because it could have been extremely detrimental. But you were just like, what do you want me to do? Like lay into you because you made the mistake? Like how many people are going to then within 2 hours correct it entirely? Right. And that to me is like, that's living out an example of how to incentivize someone to continue to be proactive. Like I'm not going to be nervous about innovating on something out of fear of messing it up because I know that there's not going to be some sort of reaction. That's like, why would you even think to do that? It's like, you know that I'm thinking to do it to try and make something better. And if it doesn't work, then whatever. We fix it if something needs to be fixed, or we drop it and we move on. And so those kind of things I think they're pivotal moments in just kind of developing as a as a partner and a professional and a person, and understanding, and at least having the awareness to sit back and be like, 9 out of 10 people would have handled that situation very differently. Like it's very possible that anyone else that I was working with would have turned around and just been like, you got to go. Like, you can't make that kind of mistake. But now here we are having this conversation. You're like, oh, you know, you're grateful for my presence, likewise. And I think those are kind of the stepping stones that continue to develop and make for a productive business, because it inspires everyone to be proactive.
It's, you know, you bring up that story, and like, it's interesting for me that one really stands out for you, because for me, when I think of that, in my mind, I'm like, the first thought was Jonathan was trying to implement a new system. Like, literally. It wasn't like, oh, this dude fucking just fired off $100,000 worth of product and we're fucked. It was like, oh man, Jonathan was out there trying to like, you know, implement this new thing and fucking didn't know what was going on. And so I think something interesting too that and I appreciate you saying that, man, because I know what it feels like also to be on the receiving end of a partner that's just like, what the fuck? And it sucks and it's terrible. Like, that's, you know, I think partnerships are, you know, like, human condition is flawed. It just is. And that's okay. We all are, right? You suck, and I love you for it. No, I'm joking. But I think, you know, there is like if you're, you know, when you're trying to do, when you're striving for what we're trying to do in the eyes of anyone really, or in the eyes of an entrepreneur specifically, our goal, right? Full transparency, trying to sell Creatures of Habit, or at least a large percentage of Creatures of Habit, a majority of Creatures of Habit, late 2027, Q4 2027, Q1 2028, that 6-month sort of period of time, for $150+ million. That's sort of what we have our target set on. That's what we want to do. And I think I said that to you kind of like in the beginning of when this thing, like, that's what.
Yeah, I remember you having said that over a year ago, and because I'm not necessarily a dreamer in that way, and I'm more like realistic of what's just happening in front of me, I for some reason have always had that in my head. And if people ask me like what the end goal is, I say that instinctively and fully believe it.
Me too.
Yeah, like the fact that you put that out there, like, for me, it's like, that's the North Star.
That's it.
Yeah.
The journey getting there is exhausting and also like wonderful at the same time, right? Like, I probably could get a job somewhere as a creative whatever, you know, for,
as long as it doesn't involve technology.
Yeah, as long as I'm not required to be a technology person, I'm good. But like, you know, I've chosen this path of discovery and uncertainty, and I love it, and you're part of it, and you know, like, we have this dream of doing this thing. I think, like, in the eyes of anyone, that would be a great outcome, right? Like, and when I hear great, all I can think of is greatness. So when you're striving, when you're in pursuit of greatness, it is going to hurt 75 to 95% of the time. Like, it just is. And you know me, I am like the guy that, like, I genuinely do love to just like run towards the pain and run towards the fear, because I do know that it's required. It's not like if it's going to happen. It's not like when it's going to happen. It's like, how much can you take? How much can you fucking take? And doesn't mean that I'm not going to get stressed out. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get stressed out and anxious. And there's going to be times where but like, I believe in my heart of hearts that Creatures of Habit is going to be a $150 to $200 million business in 3.5, 4 years. You know?
Yeah.
And we're sharing the journey with the community, and I think it's a fucking cool thing.
Yeah. No, I'm aligned on that, and we've kind of hit on those themes before, so we don't have to like go too deep into it, but we mentioned 75 hard before, and it's kind of a similar thing where it's very logical for someone to look at you both in relation to wanting to run a startup and in relation to doing 75 hard and say, why are you like doing that? Like, why would you subject yourself to that?
Yeah, like your parents did.
Yeah. And they're obviously very supportive. Love them. Great people. They're obviously very supportive of me in doing it. But the real answer is there is no gratification other than like, I want to see how far I can push myself. And then there's going to be things that open up as a result of that. Like even early on, it's made me think about how I optimize my time. And that has like nothing to do with the objective of 75 hard. It's like a list of hard things. But the byproduct of that is me learning something else that, on the 76th day, I'm probably not going to work out twice. Or maybe I will. Maybe I will actually work out twice. But on that day, like what I learned about budgeting my time throughout those 75 days may be the takeaway, right? And so the same thing comes for in operating the business. A lot of the takeaways, candidly, are not really financial reward. It's more of what's happening and like the fact that I can tell that story about messing up those orders. Like I'm going to remember that. Someone who works with me that has a similar experience, I'm probably going to respond more similarly to you, more similarly to them as you did to me than maybe I would have initially, just because like I have that experience and there's value there that's not necessarily tied to the dollars. And the only reason that you get to walk away with it is because you're like, I'm going to try and push myself to do something that's probably inconvenient and hard, but it's worth it.
What you just sort of reminded me of is like these lessons that we learn. Doesn't matter how old you are. Like I'm sitting here and can honestly say that I've probably got the kind of person I am. I've probably got at least 30 hard years of building in business. I would imagine by 70, at least 32, at least. But I would imagine at 75 years old, like I don't see much changing for me in terms of the way I think. I think I'll probably still be hard on myself. I probably think I'll still challenge myself on a regular basis. I think I'll probably still be in good shape and watch what I eat and work out often. I think I'll probably still be a creative thinker and a dreamer. And I have so much time to fuck up. And you're only 33 or 30. What are you? 32?
32. Yeah.
32. So you've got at least fucking 40. What do you got? You got 40 years. You got 10 more years than I do. If you're really thinking about like how much can you really execute after 75? Maybe we can. Maybe if we're living to 120, at that point. But like, it's just it's what you do in a day in business is really like. Not every day is going to be a high five. Not every day is going to be a terrible one. Some days are kind of just going to kind of like float by, right? And you're just going to be like, oh, well, nothing really crazy happened today. But I think for us at this, where we are right now, it's a very promising place to be. It's a very promising place to be, and like that, and it feels really good. It feels really good, and I know that like it's not like, oh man, right now it feels really good, so I'm not gonna get too attached to it. I'm embracing it, man. I'm embracing it, and I think everybody that's in a position where like, things are good at the company or things are good in your business. I mean, the reason why we started this podcast was because most entrepreneurs never talk about the shit that's not going well. Never, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if there was like in thinking towards I don't know how many episodes of this that we'll do, how long it will go on, but in visualizing what an episode would look like at $150 million exit, the moods for the episodes are probably going to be like,
oh, totally,
like all the way across. And that's just what it is. But
let's
just talk
some. Let's just give a little bit of like kind of tech talk right now. So we're averaging for January, which is strong. We're averaging around 10 grand a day in sales.
Yep.
Our conversion rate is in the high 3%, so 3 point whatever. I mean, there's been a number of days in January where we're reaching 4% in conversion rate. our new customer ROAS, which means what percentage of new customers, the return on ad spend is for new customers is just about 2, right? And our blended ROAS, actually, we didn't go over blended ROAS in our meeting yesterday. What is our blended
we
right
didn't.
now?
Well, because our blended is probably like 6.5.
Do we want to talk? Just explain what that means to everyone.
Yeah, that's just new customers coming in, what they're spending, plus returning customers and what they're spending, and take that as your numerator, divide that by how much marketing spend you have. So to put it simply, if you have new customers coming in spending $2 and you have returning subscribers spending $3, so $5 total in revenue coming in, and to keep it simple, you spent $1 on marketing, right? That's a 5x blended ROAS, right? $1 went out, $5 are coming in. In terms of marketing efficiencies, we look in more real time at the new customer, because what you're spending on paid media is really not going to influence as much your
Blended.
overall retention, right? So for retention, we're paying attention to, product quality and people's consumption habits.
And let's just explain what retention means for those that are not deep in.
Yeah, retention is just getting people to continue to come back and retaining their business, right? And so someone comes and purchases for the first time in December. They're part of that new customer ROAS in December. We want them to come back in January. And we're looking at what those percentages are to understand who's coming back, why they're coming back, and what we could be doing better to make sure that they do come back. And overall, so that's what's interesting about this year too, I think, in what we're forecasting out, which is we are trying to push to acquire a lot more new customers. And so with that, the expectation is that our blended ROAS will probably be flat, right? Because we are going to push a lot more money out into the marketplace to then be able to get people to come in. Mm-hmm. What we experienced last year was we had a 2.2 new customer last year throughout the entire 2023, and a blended of, I believe, 6.1. The prior year, our blended was like basically new customer, like same thing. But by taking marketing spend down and getting super efficient, we started recognizing the retention revenue. So what that does for us in terms of proof as a business model is understand that you can successfully step on the gas and then lean off the gas a little bit if you need to, and understand how those levers are going to flow. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I think we're also very positive about what's happening this year, is because there's a lot more understanding of the control that exists there.
One of the coolest things that I think is like just obvious in January, and I know that January, February, March is slated and has historically been our best months, but we decided to increase the spend, and we basically made a decision to double the spend for January in on Meta, predominantly Meta and Google. Mm-hmm. And we just had a meeting with our guys, and they have not done that yet. They've been a little bit slower to increase spend, and they're the pros, so like they kind of have an understanding of like how much we should scale at what time. I think we actually did put a little fire under their butt though yesterday, just to sort of say, hey, like you're not really doing what we talked about. However, we have not really increased. I think we might have increased like historically 10% of spend over the first 2 weeks of the month compared to November. Mm-hmm. However, we already have seen a 35% increase in revenue.
Yeah, that was I'm glad you thought about that yesterday, because I was having a similar thought process where I was like, I was happy with what we were seeing in early returns in the month, but I forgot that I wasn't looking exactly at the spend number. And then when I saw that spend number, I was like, oh, this is like,
I mean, it's nice.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To see that.
It's a good place to be. We just want to try and push it more aggressively.
Because imagine if you actually ramped it to 100% of what you spent in November. Yeah. And you're not going to grow. It's so interesting too, right? Like there's like a real science when it comes to this. If you have if the algorithm is working in your favor, you have product market fit, you know where you're targeting the customers, you would imagine that you can just be like, all right, well, these ads work, so we're just gonna like pour fuel on it and just see, and you know, everything is gonna scale accordingly. And it just doesn't work that way. The more money you spend, the less successful the metric looks. It's not necessarily the less successful the campaigns are, but the less successful the metrics look because you're spending more money. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's like there's so many like really, it's such a complicated. And maybe someone would look at the restaurant business and say, whoa, that's way more complicated. There's way more moving parts in the restaurant business. I don't know, actually. I really don't know. But I do think that like digital marketing, which is what we're in the business of digital marketing at the end of the day, is so intricate.
There's different components to it, right? There's a creative component, and then there's the technical component in understanding how the algorithms are interpreting, how people are reacting to what you're putting out and the dollars that you're putting behind it. And then there should be some crossover between what that data is telling you and also the creative, like something that you've called out too. And if you want to dig into it at all, but like Knight Kap, right, as a product, it's been very confusing to understand how the data correlates with the creative, even because some of the creative, not some of the still shots that we've been putting out, but the videos are somewhat consistent with the way that you present meal one in terms of the backdrop. You're the one communicating. It's just a different product, and the data is just weird. It's like hard to interpret.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, that's where it is very intricate, but those two things go hand in hand, and you have to. There's only so much you can do to pull the levers on the tech side, right? You have to work within the confines of what Meta is doing, or like we were talking yesterday about.
Yeah, but the one
Google.
the one thing that you didn't mention, and maybe it would fall into the bucket of tech or the technical side of things, but you know, we assume, and we're talking about this because Knight Kap is not catching the traction that we were hoping for, and so. Though it's an awesome product. I have it every night. I take it with me everywhere. It actually works. It's a really great product. It tastes really good, but it's just not doing what we want it to do. And so there's obviously creative that you have to consider. There's the technical component where you're spending that money, right? Or like how you're spending the money. But ultimately, there's another piece that says like, are you presenting it to the right people?
Yeah.
You know? And we assume that like the trifecta of people in the world of wellness is fitness, nutrition, and sleep, right? Like those are the three things we all know. If there was a triangle for better living, it would be like movement, what you're putting into your body, and how well you're sleeping. Like those are the three things. If you get those dialed, you're in a really good place. You can kind of do anything from there, right? If you can't get that dialed, you know, at least two of the three strong, you're going to struggle in many other areas in your life. So we would imagine that like the meal one ideal customer is like, fuck yeah, I want a hot chocolate that's going to help me sleep at night, like for real, without melatonin. I would love that. And we're wrong.
We might be.
Well, what the data is telling us, the data is telling us something that's weird, and I think that that's just like a glitch in the system. But what we're seeing in terms of sales on the product is that we're wrong.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, so because we got the feedback recently of how that product might be very suitable for someone who's like upper middle aged, that's starting to have more problems with sleeping as they age. And as we heard that, the use case made perfect sense to me. But then I also had like this thought in my mind of, I wonder how that feels, and I want to get your reaction to, like, it's one of those things where it's like, is that what you want to build the brand for? Right, we're targeting that like high performance wellness audience, and we made Knight Kap also with that in mind. You know, if it is very beneficial for, just say like people 50 to 60 years older, yeah, you know, you're then marketing to two very different demographics, and maybe they do have some common interests, but like the type of activity they're performing, that audience is probably not doing CrossFit. Maybe they're, you know, playing pickleball. Right, but they're active. They do it every day.
Golf, pickleball,
yeah.
You know, swimming laps.
Yeah, like, how does that make you feel, I guess, as a creator of that product and the brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very, very great question to pose for it, because let's just say that is the truth, right? Let's just say this, Knight Kap is way better served in the older community of people that are like really struggling with sleep. Honestly, I didn't even know older people had like a sleep thing, but who knows, right? It could be accurate. I think for me, as a guy who just genuinely loves to like help people, if that's the community that can really use this product, I'm all for it. And I'm like, let's go. But when you really think about it from a business standpoint, you just now murkied the waters in the realest way, right? Like, you would not, the creative that you would use to target my mom is definitely not me in a gym doing, muscle ups with my shirt off. It's just not, it's just not. Or having a tagline that just says "better in bed." You know what I mean? Like, that's not the ideal customer messaging for that community.
Yeah.
It's like, what I think it would be like, you want to go the whole 18 holes, get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Dude, look at that.
Yeah.
Campaign right there. So I think that's a great point. And again, like, we're here and we're talking, we've kind of made a decision that we're going to give Knight Kap all of Q1. Mm-hmm. We're going to give it all of Q1 to see what shakes out. And we've created new content. We've got a few different targeted audiences that we're going to put it in front of. And if it doesn't happen by the end of March, chances are, Samurai Sword slice it.
Yeah. Well, the other huge change that you didn't mention is it's no longer an eye mask that comes with the double subscription.
Truth.
It's got that nice Knight Kap mug now.
By the way,
mug.
That Creatures of Habit mug is going to survive Knight Kap whether it lives or dies.
That's also, if that's what helps Knight Kap take off,
that'd be amazing.
That's just one of those things where, like, you probably wouldn't be building a deck to pitch a business and be like, the mug is going to be the differentiator.
By the way, if you're listening to this and you haven't tried Knight Kap, I would highly urge you to, like, after the podcast, just go on creaturesofhabit.com and give it a go, especially because we're giving away those sick. I mean, I'm not saying this because the mugs are very dope.
Yeah.
They're super dope.
I was expecting them to not be as quality as
the only thing that
were.
I would love, what I wish would be a little bit better on the mug, is that the actual print of Creatures of Habit is a little
solid white.
It would be better if it was a bit more solid.
Yeah.
And I think that they purposefully, because of the vibe of the mug, made it a little less solid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm very happy with how this episode came out. I mean, I feel like we talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about the good, the bad. We talked about, right now we're in a really great place. And, it's a new year. We don't do advertising. This is the Creatures of Habit podcast. We used to give a discount for Creatures of Habit on the podcast. I've been forced not to do those discounts anymore on this podcast. So we're not giving a Creatures of Habit Meal 1 discount on this podcast. But I will say this. It is... the new year, and with the new year brings, ideally, inspiration, motivation, and what I know to be the number one thing, discipline, to actually have you hit your goals. So if you're not using Meal 1 and you've got a plan for success in the world of nutrition, performance this year, check out creaturesofhabit.com with a K and go subscribe to Meal 1. It's the easiest, most, in my opinion, delicious. It's the meal that I look forward to every single day. Like, I worked out this morning, I did legs heavy, and all I was thinking about on the walk home was my chocolate Meal 1 that I added a scoop of peanut butter protein powder to. And I was just like, that's all I wanted. Like, I was like so fucking excited for it. I look forward to it every single day. You guys know me. I mean, I have it every single day. I do not miss a day. I take it with me everywhere. It's like the perfect healthy meal. So definitely check out Meal 1 for the new year specifically. Subscribe. You can cancel next month. You subscribe. You get a bunch of cool free shit. and you get, put into this community of people that are using it on a regular basis, and it is really just like like the most convenient super magic macro meal. It's a magic macro meal. So check out meal one, and then also if you're up for it and you want to increase your sleep recovery score, fucking try out Knight Kap. Right?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I think next time that we catch up, we'll have made some good updates on the production side of things. Probably have some updates there and just sharpening the saw on that stuff.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, just pushing with Q1.
Pushing with Q1. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode. I love doing these. I think these are going to be just fun, like literally bringing you guys along the journey with us on a monthly basis. Just giving you all the news, the good, the bad, the better, the good, the bad, the better. Better habits, better life. I appreciate you guys and I love you guys, and it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast. I would imagine you're not going to share this with your, non-entrepreneurial friends or non-CPG arena friends. But if you have friends in those places and you think someone would find this interesting, share it. All you got to do is go to the KOH Pod official Instagram handle and then go to the episode and just hit the share button on your handle, and it'll just share it to all your friends. And that would mean the world, right? If you want to copy and paste the link and post it, that would be great too. I'm not asking you to do that much work, but I really would. That's how I'm asking you to pay for the content is just to really share it. And of course, as you know, I'm gonna ask if you're up for it. Write us a review. Give us a 5-star rating. Don't give us a 2-star rating and a shitty review. You could save it. Don't fucking do it. And yeah, I love you all. I really do. I love you guys. I love pouring into you guys. And if you're also, one last thing that I want to mention is we've sort of increased the intensity of the Kreatures of Habit weekly newsletter. And I'm putting a lot of time into that. I really do. I think a lot about it. I end up writing a fair bit every week to share with you guys about just things that I believe are valuable, that I've experienced or friends of mine have experienced, and I've been really excited about that. And you guys have been really great about responding to it, and I'm writing back to your responses. I just love doing it, and I know that the community is appreciating it. So if you're not on the newsletter, if you're not on the email list, you should go to the website and drop your email in there, because we always share cool shit. But those newsletters over the last couple of months have been really something I've enjoyed doing. So I love you. I appreciate you. Until the next one, y'all, don't forget to subscribe. Peace.